Hey everybody, I am Jason Tondro, a developer for Starfinder, and I am here with my distinguished colleagues for the Starfinder Q&A panel. We had a lot of questions yesterday about sort of lore-related issues. This might be kind of similar in structure. We're just here to take whatever questions you folks have about Starfinder at all, whether it's mechanics or lore or whatever, anything Starfinder related. And before we get right into it, I'm going to let my friends and colleagues introduce themselves. Joe?
Hey, I'm Joe Pasini. I'm Starfinder's lead designer, and I work primarily on the hardcovers for Starfinder. So your Galaxy's Exploration Manual, your Aliens Archive volumes and such.
And I'm John Compton. I'm Starfinder senior developer. Like Joe, I work primarily on the Starfinder hardcover books, in my case, focusing primarily on the upcoming Tech Revolution and Galactic Magic, as well as the Starfinder or Starship Operations Manual.
Yeah, and I do like adventures primarily. I've Fly for Your Die has been coming out. I think the last volume came out last month. We're on Horizons of the Vast now. That's Jason Killa was the lead developer on that, and I assisted him with developing all the back matter material. We're still working on that, still putting that stuff out. I also developed the two modules that we have out or coming out, Junker's Delight and Liberation of Locust One. Joe, is that the Deck of Many Worlds in a frame behind you?
Not quite framed. It might be duct taped. The rumors aren't to be confirmed or denied here, but yeah, that is an uncut sheet of the Deck of Many Worlds sitting on my wall, including the instruction cards. You can see those weird gaps are the instruction cards there too. But yeah, it's double-sided too. So
that is super sweet. The uncut sheet. That's a fantastic memento. I know you worked really hard on that.
It was it was a project.
Yeah, it was a project. All right, John Godek, whom we know. John, big fan of your work. Thanks for writing for us. Will we be getting more high-level APs like Devastation Arc coming soon? And what about more stewards-related content, like an AP? So anything high-level and anything stewards-related. I guess I'm the adventure guy.
Jake, you'd be the one to speak to high-level stuff. Yeah, and stewards-related, I could say there is... there will be something. That's all I can say about
that. Did the stewards mechs make it into the tech rev?
They did, yes.
Oh, fantastic.
Or at the very least, I know some of the art did. So we have some stuff about them.
They're like big, giant blue cop robots, basically. Like at one point, they had like a little thing like on their head.
that was one of the concept pieces that we did not go with. Yeah, the stewards do have... Every one of our mechs has a different visual design, and the stewards mechs hit some classic mech notes, almost hitting some kind of Gundam reminiscent ideas. So the stewards of all of our mechs are the ones that seem most likely to have weird extra projections or like rocket boosters on your shoulders or things like that. So yeah, we have some cool art of those guys. The one thing I can say on high-level adventures is that whenever we're planning adventures, there's always a little bit of push-pull. Sometimes from very familiar members of our staff, where I will be like, I would like more high-level content. And some of the conventional wisdom in creating adventures is that like lower level stuff tends to sell better. Like it appeals to newer players a lot more readily because lower levels have far fewer things to juggle. There's a sense of, if I can jump in at first level, then that's a great place to start, right? Like it's one. So oftentimes we're competing interests on like how much we're pushing toward these lower level adventures for gateway products versus how much we're looking to things and saying, wow, we haven't done a lot of like level 17 stuff. What would a level 17 module look like? So a lot of publication factors.
Yeah. John's absolutely right. Oh, Joe, go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, please continue, because I was going to go back to mechs for a second. So after you're done.
Yeah, John's absolutely right. Like we all want to do high level content. I think a lot of the adventure creators want to do that. We had to wait a while just to get 1 3-volume high level AP in the mix. We want to do it, and because we've got this whole game, right, that we've only kind of supported 2/3 of, and we want to get the rest of that stuff out there. But there are some publication realities. Now, the good news is that the modules are slowly going up in level, right? Junker's Delight starts at 1st. Locust 1 starts at 4th. We have a couple more coming out next year that we haven't announced yet, or that we're working on, I should say. Will that continue to go all the way up through like 13th level, 17th level? I don't know. We would like it to, but there's publication realities that might not let that happen. Joe?
Yeah, just really quickly about the mechs. We do have a lot of cool sample mechs for different organizations that are in the Pact Worlds and beyond, including the stewards, I believe. And of course, you still get to make your own mechs and have them look like whatever you want them to. But we're still, I think, all abuzz. Like I can still think back to our first meeting where we saw some of this mech sample art, and we're just like, wow, this is amazing. The art is coming from inside the house, and it's gorgeous. So it was a lot of fun to see, because it is, you know, there's like a collaborative leapfrogging process of art comes up with something cool, and then we come up with the words that justify that cool thing, right? Like John did a great job of doing all this text for these just full art spreads of mechs, pointing out little details and riffing on what the in-world explanation for those are. Like it's great stuff when we can collaborate like that, and Tech Revolution is full of that stuff. So it's exciting. So not really related to your question about stewards specifically, but I wanted to sneak that in there.
Fun stuff. Yeah. All right. Let's see what do we got next. JRock9430 asks, I'd like to know if we'll see the Skitter Saga series continue for Free RPG Day. And second question, and if we'll see any mechs in that by chance. Well, we can't tell you.
Yeah,
we can't tell you, but stick with us, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. Now, mechs is a special challenge for things like a free RPG day or a one shot, because they've kind of got some mechanics. There's like this whole subsystem there that if you're designing a product for walk-up play, where like just a random person in the game store just comes in and like throws down in a free RPG day, the whole mech subsystem might be a little bit intimidating to those new players. Doesn't mean that we can't do it in adventures, but maybe that's not the perfect product for it, right? So we are talking about ways to get mechs into adventure content so that subsystem gets used, but maybe not in free RPG day.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay. We have to think about design goals for every product, and we have so many different niches that we're filling with these different products that, like Jake says, Free RPG Day is more about exposing people to sort of what Starfinder is. And Starfinder can be so many things that it is difficult to pick sometimes. Even what are we showing you of the Starfinder universe to get you hooked? And mechs might be that for some people, but if we were to do mechs in a Free RPG Day product, that would kind of be communicating like Starfinder is all about mechs, and that's just a cool and new upcoming piece of it, but it's just a piece. So
yeah, totally. All right, well, you guys both worked on this, so let's see what you think. What changes? Oh, this is from Zerg Titan, to get my pronunciation right. Zerg Titan 99. What changes are you able to share right now about the Nanosite? Changes from the playtest. Who wants to go?
I mean, I could talk about it, but John, I think might want to.
The biggest one that comes to mind for me is changing up some of the Nanosite gear array. There were a few concerns that came up in the playtest about how you qualify for learning different gear types or what it costs to learn different gear types. And those have been smoothed out a lot, especially when it comes to creating higher level nanosites, so that you don't have to necessarily do a level by level building process to kind of reverse engineer your vocabulary. You can just say, I'm level 9 or building a level 9 character. I get the following different major and minor forms. Let's go. Much more streamlined there.
Joe?
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest and most important change, I think. We also addressed some stuff, people noted some very key mistakes. That's what we do playtests for. We have our great writers and authors and developers and editors who all look at things, and then we put them out in the public, and then thousands more people look at it and go like, did you notice this? And like, I guess we didn't. So we got to fine tune all that. But what John's talking about, so the Nanosite, for people who aren't familiar maybe, is a class that has a swarm of nanites within them, and they can do multiple things with those. But one of those is manifest gear and weapons with it. And the system that we put out there in the playtest was a little bit fiddly, a little bit complex. It required you to do kind of a lot of calculations, and especially like John was saying, if you're doing a higher level, if you're starting at a higher level and needing to figure out what you did before. So we vastly simplified all that, and I think came up with something that will be easier to pick up and just play with, which is always a consideration.
Yeah, and the iconic Nanosite, I think we're still working on, right? We haven't been able to like show that guy yet. Yeah, good stuff. Okay.
I mean, Eric Mona in his keynote address ended up sharing the final cover for the Tech Revolution, and anytime that we've introduced a new class, we sure have featured that character or those characters on the cover. So I haven't seen anybody point out the new Nanosite iconic yet. I guess there's still stuff that remains to be discovered.
Well, it's like a puzzle. We like puzzles in this group, so it's like you have to decipher it yourself. All right, so
Joe, for the puzzle reward, why didn't we have it be like the Nanosite reveal?
Next time we'll reveal the Nanosite next year's puzzle hunt.
Oh, good. Well, that'll be time.
A little late. Yeah.
Let's talk about galactic magic a little bit. One of our questions from John Godek again is about. Can you share us any details about galactic magic? Did we unpack that book in a previous panel already?
So we decided to look forward to Gen Con for our talk about galactic magic and focus kind of more on Tech Revolution and Galaxy Exploration Manual. And of course, Alien Archive 4, I'll just throw in there because that's pretty recent too. But yeah, for galactic magic, definitely look forward for us to be talking about it. We want to talk about it. There's a lot to talk about. And obviously there's been you could piece together some things if you were following Paizo closely about what might be in that book. But yeah, for now, I think we want to focus on what's coming out next week, for instance. So yeah,
right.
Paizo does a Paizo Live broadcast once a month, and so for Paizo Live 2, I was on it, and my spoiler for that was that we were doing galactic magic in the first place, and I think I go on for roughly a minute about a few broad topics of what's coming in there, in case you want a preliminary taste.
I know yesterday we talked about how it's got some kind of slice of life sections on like how the average citizen of the Pact Worlds interacts with magic on a daily basis and what normal people think about magic and stuff. But
exactly.
All right, so Bronze Dragon asks, will there be more Hell Knights in stuff? Or a Doom-like adventure?
I'm always here
John,
for Hell Knights.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, whenever we get together and pitch adventures, John's always got, like, and there's a reason for that, because Hell Knights are visually very distinctive. Like, they're super cool. And they're popular and very recognizable, and we want to put them into adventures. John, what do you want to do with Hell Knights? What would you like to see?
I love seeing Hell Knights occupy a slightly darker than morally gray sort of adventure, because Hell Knights are, they sure look lawful evil, but at their core, they are primarily lawful neutral. And that tends to be the sort of, are they enemies or allies this time sort of sequence. So I really love stories where you are facing off against some sort of group or person who is at first an antagonist, but later on is a true ally or sort of an ally of convenience where both of you are kind of growling at each other from across the table. And Hell Knights are beautiful at that sort of role. So I would love to have like an adventure where the first act is Hell Knights are being jerks and lawful, but by the end, oh no, there's the swarm is showing up or whatever stand-in you want for bigger threat. And now we have to kind of do that early predator muscle high five with each other as we get these two tough teams to team up against a bigger threat. To me, that's fun storytelling and a great use of Hell Knights.
Yeah, I always want to do the exact opposite. I want to start off with them being lawful neutral, but I always see them as more evil than neutral, right? So you start off working with them, and then they they get their methods get so extreme by the end of the adventure that you're like, okay, no, like somewhere we crossed the line, and I don't know where it was, but we're definitely on the other side of it now. Little trivia: for a long time in the first outline of Liberation of Locust 1, the bad guys were going to be Hell Knights, but we ended up reworking it to be the Islandi Star Empire instead, and some pirates. And as for the Doom style adventure, wait and see. I just stick with us, okay? All right.
You gotta love these Q&As, right? Where people ask us questions and you go, and you just hold on. Ask us again.
We will
ask
tell
again
you
later.
nothing.
Reply hazy.
Yeah. All right. Tusken Raider 55. This is okay. So I don't know what we can do with this question, but we'll try it. Why are grenades in Starfinder so weak? In real life, they are deadly, but they don't really do much in Starfinder. Well, Joe, you're the mechanics guy. Can you give us a straight answer?
Jump on this grenade, Joe.
Let's see. Well, let's address the supposition, which is that they are weak. I think primarily it's because they can be cheap eventually. They used to be even stronger, but early on we made sure that you could not just grenade someone, like take a level 1 grenade and stop someone from casting a spell, for instance. Like our language is very clear such that you would have to you can't just, what I just said, you can't just toss a 50 credit grenade at someone and have them be unable to cast their 6th level spell or something. But I would say, why does a laser pistol do 1d4 damage? Why does getting shot by a laser pistol not murder you outright? Like, especially if it's a critical, right? If it's hit a critical part of your body, it's just we want combats to last longer than a round, I guess is what I would say to that. Also, in case you haven't seen it, a lot of our grenades just got cheaper, which makes them, I think, more powerful by comparison because you can buy more of them. I'd have to think about that a little more and investigate the question a bit more. But I think they should be balanced for a reasonable play experience rather than full on, 100% authenticity, because that can get unfun pretty quickly, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's right. It's important to remember that we're not making a realism simulator here, right? We're making a playable game. John, you wanted to chip in here.
Grenades can usually solve one of 2 different categories of play. One of them is the pocket fireball, which is largely what Starfinder grenades do. It is point and click and it explodes. But there's one capacity that grenades in Starfinder tend not to do, which is the idea of flushing. So if grenades, one other way that we could have looked at grenades would have been to say grenades do, let's say, twice as much damage just for funsies, but that they have a short delay, or that you can do, use your reaction to dive out of the area of effect or gain some bigger bonus to not take damage. And so that way when people are behind cover, you can be like, throw in a grenade, and watch as everybody scatters and goes, oh no, grenades. And so that's something we don't currently do, but might be future design space, or could be, a way that if you want to homebrew a variation of grenades, you could.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up this question because I wanted to make sure what Joe said got out there, which is we changed the prices on these to make grenades less expensive. In the first printing of the core rulebook, they were really expensive, and we have changed that. So if you have avoided grenades because they seem like too much money for not enough bang, that equation has changed. Okay. There's a lot of questions that we can't answer for reasons of things that haven't been announced yet.
Can I jump in real quick,
Yeah.
Jake?
For sure.
Just wanted to say that, in the Starfinder FAQ online, that we have just a full FAQ and errata published for the core rulebook and other books, that does have the new prices too for grenades, in case you don't happen to have the second printing of the book. Just always like to plug that exists. Yeah, sorry.
So Kitsune Warlock writes, are there any plans on expanding the lore of the legacy races introduced in the Alien character deck? Joe, start, or John? Either way, Joe?
Yes. John maybe can be more eloquent about it.
About expanding on the legacy races? Yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
Basically, anytime that we are creating a new adventure or we're creating some sort of setting-related book or something like that, we're taking a look at what species are featuring in this storyline. So a couple of APs ago, there were like a lot of Brothus, or there were a lot of Bantrids, or whatever, and those are opportunities to say, this is probably a great idea or opportunity for us to explore. Let's say halflings in an upcoming AP, like.
Yeah,
we go to the planet of halflings. Let's do a halfling article. So it's partly opportunity based, rather than us necessarily saying, "By golly, it's been 4 months since we published the word half orc. We need a whole half orc article to make this right." Like that's not usually how we do things.
Yeah,
and we are aware that we put 5 new species out there in a deck in a product that's only that one product. So we're definitely aware of that and keeping that at the top of our minds as we work on other projects.
Yeah, because every other species has at least one page in an alien archive somewhere, and that's not a lot, but it's something. And so we want to give. Yesterday, while we were doing the lore Q&A, John came up with this great idea of putting the kobolds on triaxis. So they can relate to the dragonkin that are already there, and that just seems I want to do that module now. That would be awesome. So what John says is exactly right. When we get an opportunity to do a Kitsune article in the back of some adventure path because there's a perfect spot for the Kitsune, that's when we'll do that.
And that is another balancing act, right? That we have an entire galaxy, and so it's we want to fill it with new, interesting, exciting stuff. We also want to carry forward a lot of traditions that we came into Starfinder with. And then of course we have 4 alien archives now with a ton of playable species that we've introduced that we want to expand on those too, So it's always we have so many favorites competing for attention and only so much space to expand on them. So
all right, so a couple of adventure-related questions, which I'm going to try and take real quickly here. First is, will Band on the Run get a sequel? So first off, that was awesome. Watching that live play, and it's so great that it's gotten such a great reception. It's a wonderful adventure. We are doing more one-shots. We have not yet planned a Band on the Run sequel, but we take requests like any good band. So if you want to see those characters come back, then let us know. This is like you are now, and maybe we can bring those characters back in another one shot, or maybe a module, or some other structure. Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I'll chime in with there is that there's also an element of lightning in a bottle for some adventure ideas. Speaking from the experience of Live Exploration Extreme, where playing from the perspective of a live reality TV show for adventures is super cool for one session, and then whether or not it does translate with the same energy into the second, third, or fourth is something that doesn't always work. So we'd have to be examining that to make sure that it's going to feel just as awesome the second time as it does the first.
That's a great point, because it's very tempting to do a sequel that is just like the first one, but then it's like sad trombone noise, right? You have to find some way to make it interesting and different. You can't go, if you're going to do a sequel to Alien, it's got to be completely different and be aliens, but still somehow still the same, right? Better, but different. Yeah, you got to find a way to make that work. So if we can come up with a way, for example, maybe we could find a way to bring the characters from Band on the Run into some other story where they're part of Zoe's there, or some kind of big entertainment thing, or maybe there's some other pop culture phenomenon that we can bring those characters into.
It all comes back to Zoe.
It does, yeah.
And if anyone can, yeah, if anyone can do that, it's these folks and the other Starfinder team members. Just watching them riff and participating in my own small way sometimes is really great. So John's right that we have to look at that stuff, but these are the best people to find. What's that?
Was Keely on the panel yesterday with you guys?
Not our Q&A yesterday. I think he was in an Adventures panel. Yes. Yeah,
the Adventures panel. Yeah, the Adventures panel. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah. So I'm going to self-indulge a question for a minute. Is there a good AP or plans for one for doing a Cowboy Bebop Firefly Merc's just trying to make it kind of game? Yes.
Let's see. Who asked that? Was that like, yeah. Did you ask that question?
I did not ask that question. This is from Aerobia. So yes, it's called Fly Free or Die, and it is out. The first, it's a 6-volume AP. Starts at first level, goes all the way to 12th. The first volume is called We Are No Heroes, and the player characters are working for this dysfunctional dystopian Edge Corp, and they all they want to do is pay rent and not get told what to do, right? So they end up stealing a starship, and they get on the bad side of a organized crime boss and their old masters at Edge Corp, and pretty soon they're being pursued by bounty hunters and assassins. But all they want to do is just kind of do their own thing, right? And not live in peace. But they can't, because the universe is after them and keeps getting up in their grill. And there's like a rival team of free traders that keeps stealing all their jobs or outbidding them. The entire AP is done. I think the last volume came out this month, although the shipping problem that we've had with COVID, kind of COVID related, that has made some of our products not ship on time. I don't know if the last volume has gone out to people yet. Has I physically shipped to customers yet? But yeah, Fly Free or Die. And if you really want to unpack every volume of that, I'm doing a developer diary where I just go through every volume of the thing and talk about what its inspirations were and how it kind of took form, what worked, what I kind of wanted to change a little bit, things that I feel like they don't work so well. Lessons learned, let's put it like that. But also a lot of great stuff and kind of walking game masters through the whole adventure, kind of like, watch out for this, and here's this cool thing you can add in here, and here's maybe some cut material that we had to leave on the cutting room floor, and here's where you can work it back in. So I do all that on the BAF channel, BAF Network, on YouTube or on your favorite podcast. Anyway, so yeah, and we go watch the trailer for it because it's got like Cowboy Bebop, Western music, and everything. Like it's right up your alley. So go watch that one. Okay.
Yeah, those developer diaries are awesome. I want to second those. Very cool. I've watched a couple, and you also get insights into the development process too, and what it's like to write one of these, and it's fascinating.
All right, so this is a mechanical question, but also touches on adventures as well. A question from our Discord chat from GM Lava Bean. Does the panel have any tips on when a party might receive more than the standard 10% sale value for an item, and when they might receive less? I've seen a few examples on APs and was curious if you could share some of those or other examples. So like, if the standard is 10%, when should we give more? When should we give less? John?
So one consideration in providing different sale values is that providing a different sale value can be a reward in itself. We oftentimes explore ideas of non-monetary rewards in RPGs as a way of breaking the mold or providing a more personalized sort of reward to your players, the ones that they talk about for years to come or that they always seek to protect. And one of them could be, hey, because you did X thing, you now have this contact who's willing to liquidate your stuff for 20% for the first X many credits per session or play period or whatever. Yeah. And that can be a really meaningful reward, whether it's an individual provider or whether it's an organizational benefit where it's like the stewards are willing to do this for you or the Aspis Consortium is willing to do this for you. So that's one of the big ways I would promote.
Yeah.
And Joe, for me, it's like a verisimilitude. Yeah, like a realism thing to some extent. If you are somewhere just mopping up groups of enemies and they all have azimuth laser pistols. I'll always go back to our iconic laser pistol for any example. And there's just, you've got dozens of them and you're trying to sell them. It's like, no one wants these. Like, they're sorry, but we have enough. We'll give you 5%, I guess, for these, for the parts, which aren't even that good either. That can almost be fun. It's a little punishing, you could say, but it's also I don't know, anytime I can add that dash, like that feels real. That feels like what it would be like if you came up with just like hauling a sack of a bunch of useless pistols with like 2 charges left. It's like, yeah, I don't want that. I'll give you some credits. I tend to trust what our AP and other adventure authors and developers put in for, they take a look at how much stuff are they going to get, what do we think people will keep, and what do we think they will sell for 10%. And that usually is on the right track. If you're doing your own thing, obviously it's a little different. You can fudge, but I'd say when you see it in adventures, it's almost always been very considered, and it's part of the math, and making sure that the PCs are getting rewarded at not just at like regular intervals, but at important intervals, I guess. Like if we know there's a big fight coming up and we need to help you gear up for that, maybe we'll give you some extra windfall, even though it doesn't technically follow the rules. We tweak the rules all the time to make adventures work, so you can feel free to do same.
Yeah, many people don't realize that we actually give twice the standard amount of treasure in APs. Like the amount of credit you're supposed to get for every level, we put twice that amount in the adventure on the assumption that players will miss some of it. When we figure out the treasure allotment for an adventure, we assume that 10% of most gear is sold, but not stuff that's like higher than the PC's level. We'll often make exceptions for consumables like grenades or healing serums or medicinals and stuff like that, because those are going to get used rather than sold, we assume. And so we treat it as full value. But I would encourage you, if you're look at what your players are doing and the time that they're spending on treasure. If they want to go out and try to find that perfect art dealer to buy this item so they can get more credits for it, or they know somebody, they know this mercenary that only uses plasma weapons, so they find a plasma rifle, and so they contact that guy on the Holonet and say, hey, I found this new plasma rifle for you. Like if your players spend time on that, then that's them asking for more reward for the time. So, give it to them.
Yeah. And that's an excellent point, because when they on their own initiative are saying, remember that guy who deals in plasma weapons? Can we track him down and sell this? That's something to reward as a GM, because that is a sign that your players are actively engaging in this setting. And you want to reward that as much as possible, because once they're engaged in the setting, they're engaged in any of the storyline that you're going to do after that. One closing point on this, for me at least, is Joe mentioned our azimuth laser pistols. This is just a quick little tidbit from Tech Revolution. We have a whole bunch of technobabble in there, and one of the terms is flashlight, which is an azimuth laser pistol or pulsecaster pistol named for being easy to obtain, cheap, and about as effective as shining a light on something. So we know what we're about.
Yeah.
And I did want to throw in that if you're talking about giving 25% for an item or two over 10%, you're not going to break your game. You can totally do that, and it'll still feel like, yeah, we got extra, we got something more out of that than we would have, and it'll be a few credits, and it's fine.
Okay. Waters Lathe asks, speaking of gear and equipment, some people are intimidated by the long equipment lists and complicated starship rules. Any chance of getting streamlined optional rules? That's kind of like two different questions, one about equipment and one about starships, but tack on whichever one you... Let's start with gear maybe, and then we'll do starships or whatever. Joe?
That's interesting. Like, I immediately think of the beginner box, right? Because that was all about streamlining rules, making an introductory, even more board gamey experience than while still being an RPG primarily. And so for that, I know we did, we simplified the equipment quite a bit, and we even gave equipment packages for each class. I believe it was for each class that we recommended equipment packages in the beginner box. So that would be my recommendation for folks who are intimidated by, because, you have books like Armory that are just packed with all sorts of weapons, with all sorts of special features and little extras that for a lot of people are goodies, and for some people are definitely like, okay, that's too much. I just want to shoot a laser or hit with a stick. Just give me those options. Let other people speak while I think of that.
Yeah, so something that kind of works off of what you're talking about, Joe, is some versions of Pathfinder have had class kits, and I think you're talking a little bit about class kits. I think we could also look at something the equivalent of role kits, where it's like, I want to play the hacker what do I need? And this is like here's the hardware expert kit. And it's not just a single tool set. It's here are 8 different pieces of gear for 329 credits, go. That could be valuable for some starting players. And as somebody who tends to get overwhelmed by gear lists in the first place, or I buy my weapon, my armor, and then I'm like, an engineering kit, I guess I'm done. Those can be really handy.
And that's something we have dabbled with for sure, where like in a Fly for Your Die volume, there's some aquatic stuff going on. And so we compiled a list of aquatic equipment, right? And said, here's just the stuff you need for this environment from various books. And in the Galaxy Exploration Manual coming out next week, we did that for some of the biomes, from some of the environments that you might go, what do you want in a subterranean environment? Here's just a small list of equipment that's relevant to this place for you to use. So we've definitely had an eye toward that, but it might be interesting to explore that more for sure.
Yeah, I've in my personal home game, I've got about half of my group who hates to go shopping. Like that's not something that they consider to be fun, right? Like they don't want to spend time going through equipment lists. So I sympathize with the question here. And in many ways, I think class kits can address like the first level situation. But as people go up in level, the need to sort of continually refresh their gear can be a bit of a challenge for some players. Sometimes the GM has to help those players specifically. Like if you can talk to the player like, okay, well, what kind of weapon do you want to use? And then you can just put that weapon in the treasure for the adventure, right? And they don't have to shop. Like you can do some of that work for them. And Archives of Nethys and other online sources allow you to sort the very large. I mean, when we started off this game 3 years ago, the equipment list was not so big, right? Like you could handle it when it was a couple of pages, 6 or 8 pages in the core rulebook. But as more hardbacks have come out and more adventure packs come out and we keep adding more and more gear all the time, like it has gotten really, really big. So, work with the player, ask them what they want, and then you as GM can kind of do some of that shopping for them. I even had like a service in Starfinder, which I called Loot Finder, where a character could spend money could spend credits, and every time they leveled up, they'd get a box of new loot that was gear appropriate for them, right? Like, so it's experiment. We have to experiment. We'll come up with different ways to do it.
And to address the second part of their, that's what I was going to talk about. We have Starship Combat reference cards are a great resource that we've made to help. So you can just hand somebody a card that has their role and only their role, because I feel like that's one of the overwhelming things about Starship Combat for an individual player. Obviously, the GM kind of has to know the rules of the whole system, but no one player really needs to know what everyone is doing at all times and how the GM's turn works and all that. You can just be sitting at your console being a gunner or being the magic officer, for instance. So there's. I think for me personally, having like a little reference card does a world of good. Instead of having a book that has, this starship system that has many pages and you're like, which part of this do I need to care about? Well, you can focus on just a piece of it.
All right. So a question from Prime. I'm not sure if it's Prime Gaming or Waters Lathe, but any character generator software you can recommend that is up to date. How do you guys make characters?
Unfortunately for this question, but fortunately for me, I just enjoy pen and paper, pencil and paper, really. Just sitting down and with a splay of books, and just flipping around, and usually with the group. And when I do it myself too, I'll often be just making characters that I know are never going to see the light of day, but I just do it for the fun. But so software wise, and in development work, when we're making stuff, we tend to use internal tools or the old fashioned way of rebuilding things just to make sure that they're built right according to the rules. So that was a long way of saying, but we have great partners, obviously, with software, if anyone wants to speak to that.
John?
So basically the way that I make Starfinder characters does not involve a licensed software. It involves a character building spreadsheet that I built when we were creating the character operations manual pre-generated characters, because those classes were not in any of the available licensed character generation things. So I've partly as a way of just learning more Excel functions, I just regularly update that and use that as a way of tracking the bare minimum of what I need. But like Joe, there's a lot of pencil and paper style work that I do, and that's partly because it means that every single character that I'm building feels like a way of reinforcing my professional skills and deeply familiarizing myself further with the game that I work on.
Yeah, we all sound like a bunch of old
The less
school
autopilot
guys
I do, the better.
Yeah. When I remember going and buying the Starfinder rulebook in the Alien Archive at a game store, down in Florida when I was still living down there, and it had just come out a few months ago. And I promptly went to a pizza place and spent like 3 hours making monsters with the Alien Archive rules in the back, And it was a way for me to learn the system and kind of how all the mechanics came together. And but I do use Hero Lab sometimes to create creatures when I'm writing Starfinder adventures, or I find it pretty handy, pretty useful. And it's got a learning curve in learning how to navigate everything, and it's always changing and updating with new classes and new feats and options and stuff. So like any application, it takes a little bit of time to learn, but I find it pretty useful, and my players have found it useful when we run campaigns. They make their characters using it and level up using it. So I would probably recommend Hero Lab if you are looking for an app. But I think what you also hear from here is I think now every single person watching this now wants John's Excel spreadsheet, right? Like that's what we all want. So
I mean that and the Starship Builder.
Yeah, the Starship Builder, which is true. We all hail John for his Starship Builder. Yeah. All right. So here, somebody appears to have done the puzzle. Zergatan99 says, "Wait, is the new Nanosite iconic a squid person?"
If by that you mean an Ishtikri, then yes, you're right. Right in the center of that cover.
That's right.
So we'll be doing some Meet the Iconic business with that in the coming month or so.
Yeah. I didn't want to. But since somebody was listening to us, so we may as well answer them. Yeah.
If you want to learn more about Ishtikri, where should you go, John? Writer of the Ishtikri.
That would be Alien Archive 3 should be.
Yep, and also some near space ? Or yeah, it should
That's
be
right.
some near space.
There's a page of variant racial abilities in near space, as well as some awesome art of Ishtikris in action.
They show up all over too, like in Fly Free or Die Volume 2. Like you go to the Ishtikri homeworld, and I got to do this great art scene like in the canteen with like the Ishtikri on a bar. So yeah, those are great. Okay. Did you change where hurled objects go farther and do more damage than thrown? I don't understand that question. Did Evil Robot Games, did you change where hurled objects go farther and do more damage than thrown mecha weapons? Oh, were thrown mecha weapons too short range in the playtest?
Okay. I think what's being referred to here is that there are melee weapons that you can have for your mech that have the thrown ability with them. So like you could have a spear for your thing, and you could say, heck with it, throw the spear. I'm down a melee weapon, whatever. But there is an action called hurl that your mechs can do where they can pick up something that is at most 2 sizes smaller than they are. And it's a weird combination of grapple and thrown weapon usage. It's basically made to capture the energy of a mech grabbing a semi-truck and hurling it at Godzilla sort of idea. So, and I think hurl has like a set range increment of 30 feet, something like that. And some of the thrown weapons have, I think, roughly 40 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, somewhere around there. I don't think that the differences are super intentional. They're made to be practical enough for mech purposes without being like the always go-to option.
Yeah, right on.
And I don't think that is something that we tweaked, so I would not expect changes from the playtest version.
Okay, good. All right, so Godzilla Killa 26. How was the feedback for the precog playtest? Do you guys want to characterize the playtest for the precog at all?
People really liked it. There obviously was some very how do I want to put this? There was shock and awe in the fact that we had given dexterity as a casting a modifier, and so we did change that. That was something I just wanted to experiment with, quite frankly. So the experiment ran, and I would say it was a success in that we got a lot of feedback and learned kind of what people were and were not comfortable with. I'm always kind of pushing against the boundaries of the systems we've inherited, and this is definitely one of those examples. And I think there are good reasons to not have dexterity be a casting, the basis of a casting class, at least for their spells. So the precog will still be dex based. That'll be their primary key ability score, but we are going with a different ability score for their spell casting. And I think that was definitely everyone was like, what? And focused on that.
Right.
But we did get a lot of good feedback, again, about sort of minor things that we missed. A lot of interesting feedback about like the spells that are on the precog list. I thought that was interesting. Like, why would a precog be able to do this or that? And I have my own justifications. That was kind of a fun, Thurston Hillman wrote the class and did an awesome job. And we took this sort of pre-rolling idea and ran with it. And I think that was pretty well received. I was pretty excited about how that played out. That was one of the big questions we had, like, does this work? And are there enough of them or not too many, that kind of thing. And so I think the primary feedback was on the spellcasting modifier and on some of the spell list stuff, which I would love to like sit down with a group of people and just talk through the spell list and like why I think this is a good spell for a precog and why this may not be. And So overall, I think it was great. It was great feedback, not all positive necessarily, but a lot of constructive feedback, and that's all we're looking for in a playtest. So many thanks again to everyone who participated in that. It really, really helps us a lot put out something that we're proud of and that we can be excited about and know that people will be excited about too.
Yeah, so the class is going to still focus on Dex, but some other stat, whatever other ability. I haven't even seen it since you fixed it, but some other ability will be necessary for their spell casting. So they'll have like sort of two stats that they'll need.
Yeah, and because dexterity is such a catch-all stat, which is one of those things I like to push against a little bit, if possible, I think that is reasonable for having, if you're going to have, and there is not a full agreement within the Starfinder team even on how to go about this and what to try, but everyone has a say, and we try things, and then we see what happens.
All right. Will we see a post-apocalyptic AP sometime? It's come up. We've talked about it. There was another question on here about a cyberpunk-related AP. John, you've always been big into Shadowrun. You've had pretty strong feelings about a cyberpunk story. Do you think we could do that in Starfinder?
Yeah, absolutely. Both an apocalyptic adventure and a cyberpunk adventure both of these are themes that really thrive when you have a somewhat isolated environment where there is nobody else coming in to save you from the apocalypse, or where your cyberpunk game is very much limited to a planet primarily because cyberpunk tends toward kind of a street level style of play as opposed to a starship travel one. So to me, both of those themes really thrive in Starfinder when you look at them as a one-shot or the equivalent of a 64-page module where you have a much more focused story and you're not going to feel tempted to go off-world in big ways. So I think Starfinder's a great avenue for both of those themes, but typically for smaller adventures or smaller scale.
Yeah, we've talked about, we've had an adventure concept titled The Junk Lords of Akaton on our short list for like 2.5 years now, which would be kind of this post-apocalyptic adventure on Akaton where you're like Mad Maxing it across the desert in your pieced together vehicles, and like fighting mutants of the wasteland or whatever. So there's a lot of love for that kind of adventure. And I think Keeley was running a post-apocalyptic game in his home campaign lately. So there's a lot of love for that. We certainly have Starfinder's got a lot of Cyberpunk features. People have been using it to play Shadowrun basically since the game came out. And it's got all the corporations and it's kind of that capitalistic dystopia that a Cyberpunk game really needs. But John's absolutely right. Like Starfinder also has starship travel, and it has this huge like galactic community. The Pact Worlds and the Vesperium and all that stuff. And it's really to do a post-apocalyptic or a cyberpunk adventure right, you have to kind of block out all that stuff. Like if the cosmic galaxy is out there, well then why don't you just get your ship together and leave? Get out of your post-apocalyptic wasteland and go to the Pact, go to Absalom Station, and watch some Zoe. But so yeah, we have to kind of shape it. Maybe we one of the things that we've often talked about is all the different genres that Starfinder can do, and we touch on this a little bit in the Galaxy Exploration Manual. But maybe there'd be a way for us to do some specific support for specific genres someday, where maybe you do a cyberpunk game, we give you some tools for that. Outside of the regular Pact World setting, you want to make your own cyberpunk game, here's some stuff to help you do that. Or you want to do Mad Max, here's some post-apocalyptic tools. We haven't found the right chance and opportunity to do that yet, but we all love it. And this is playing to Starfinder's strengths because it can do all that stuff. So hopefully.
Well, I was going to say, Jake, I mean, you said it just now, but yes, next week Galaxy Exploration Manual drops, and one Jason Tondro wrote a section about subgenres that if you don't want to wait for our adventures in those subgenres, you can have some advice from a great adventure writer and developer about running those games on your own.
So much. I could have written 10 times as much on that stuff, but that's those. All right. This is from the Killing Jay. This is another specific adventure question. Will Horizons of the Vast be a good AP to pick up and run? I've never bought and ran an AP releasing monthly, and I'm a little hesitant due to not knowing the full scope and plot before I run. Well, okay, so first off, I hear you, because it can be intimidating. Like it's 6-volume AP, there's a lot of pages, it's a big project. But Keeley is lead developing this adventure path, and he knows how to bring GMs and players on board it. It's got a lot of sandbox qualities. So you're going to this unexplored star system. We know there's creatures and plants that live there, but there's no sapient life. There's no culture that already lives on these planets. You're the first sapient life to go there, and you've got a patron. Maybe it's Abadar Corp, or maybe it's the Vesperium, or it's the Starfinder Society, or it's the Xeno Wardens, or whatever. You can pick, and then you go to that planet, and you're given this chunk of land to develop, and you can land anywhere in there that you want. So you can land in the forest, or you can land by the lake, or in the mountains, or whatever. And then as you build your settlement and you expand it as you want to do that, and you have a lot of leeway in how you choose to expand it. And there's a story going on. There's the adventure path that's getting you into plots and giving you some hints of what's going on, and the Waydana system's mysterious secrets, and why are there no people on these planets? I mean, we're talking about Starfinder, where like people are everywhere. I mean, there are sapient beings that live in the middle of the sun, for crying out loud. Like, how come there's no one living on this planet that's perfect for people to live on? That's a very good question. So there's a plot, there's a story, but there's also a lot of player-driven options and choices there. So how you build your settlement, your charter, where you build your towns, how you expand it, what you choose to prioritize. Do you go for the military and the defense systems first, or do you build a school, or do you focus on your economy, right? And this is all very, very open. So it's a good adventure path for players and GMs to have conversations over. Like, what do you guys want to do with this, and how do you want it to go? And whenever that part of the system starts to stall out, you can go back to the story, and you can fight. You can explore this planet, and have adventure scenes, but also diplomacy and intrigue as you deal with your rivals that are come down to the Waydana system. And there's all these other planets in the Waydana system that all have mysteries of their own and adventures of their own to explore. So it comes out bi-monthly. The question said monthly, but I want to note that Rise of the Vast comes out every other month. So that should give you time. That gives you 2 months to get through each adventure. And if you fall a little behind, well, that's okay. There's no time clock. There's nobody looking over your shoulder, waiting for you to finish on time. So take as much time as you want. And then come to the forums, because there's a very active Q&A always on each adventure that comes out. And you can post your questions, and you can see how other people have played through these adventures. And you can learn from their experiences, right? Like, we can share all that stuff. That's the beauty of gaming in the 21st century, is that we can share. So yeah, give it a shot. I think you'll like it.
That looks like it's 4 o'clock. Just
it is.
Snuck up
it
on
is
us.
4 o'clock. Okay, we have to go. So where can people find you both? John, you want to start? Like, if someone wants to follow you or get in touch with you or read your stuff, where can they do that?
Sure. So I am on Twitter at Archeotog. You'll find that in the lower third that's on Twitch right now. I'm also a regular participant in the Starfinder RPG Discord server, where you can take all sorts of questions and ideas, and happy to chime in. And and then I've written for all sorts of bits of Paizo's product lines, so you can find any of my work there if you ever want to run any of my adventures.
Joe?
I'm Joe Adultman on Twitter and Twitch, and you can always find my Paizo email if you want to reach out about anything. And I would also recommend going on the forums, the Paizo forums, for rules questions in particular, and check out that FAQ page too.
Yeah, and I'm at Dr. Comics, all one word, on Twitter, and like John said, you can see that right there down there in our lower third. And I've been pretty active here on the Discord, so I've got an AMA going like my colleagues do. So come on in there, and any questions that we didn't get to John or Joe, and just drop in their AMAs and ask them directly. And I hope it's something that we can talk about, and not something that hasn't been announced yet, so we have to say we can't. Thank you so much to everybody for coming and joining us here. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks to Aaron for helping me with those questions over the course of the hour. And enjoy the rest of the show. Okay? Thanks, everyone.